Thank you, Janet. Welcome, everybody. Let's see. This is the month that the overarching topic is compassion, the desire to see others free from suffering. And, I keep waiting for the slide to change, but...
Slider is right by the flowers.
Right by the flowers.
In front.
Let's do that after we greet, okay? Okay, I saw this. I think it's been said many different ways. This is how Martin Luther King said it. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It understands that an edifice that produces beggars needs restructuring. I think we all share that thought. Welcome to our service today. That's the order of service here. We have Janet Ellinger and Gfall giving our talk today, considering grief. We're very fortunate that they're willing to come and talk to us. And Lily, how about if you read that?
We must admit compassion is not always easy. Still, we choose it not because the world is kind, but because we can be.
Because we can be. We can be kind, even if the world isn't always kind. Sometimes that's the only thing that gets us through is kindness. Thank you. Okay, Callan, can you do the chalice lighting for us, please? I'm going to read this one because E.B. White is one of my favorite authors. I love Charlotte's Web. I just love that. Yeah, thank you, Callan. I love Charlotte's Web. I've read it so often. I recommend to any of you, if you haven't, to listen to him read it. It's a whole new experience. He reads it, as he made it up in his head. It's really wonderful. But he was also a great writer and has a book on democracy that I recommend also. And this is something he wrote that I agree with very much. All that I hope to say in books, all that I ever hope to say, is that I love the world. Okay, time for our Greetapalooza. Okay. Lily, will you go ring the bell one more time? We'll just let it settle us down. Such a nice, clear, calming sound. I always think of that librarian at Stillwater who does that to open the children's story time, and then she says, "Good listening." So good listening, everybody. Okay, joys and concerns. So we'll take a rock and drop it in water. I have a concern. I talked with the Human Services director this week and learned that our community, our county, receives over $300,000 worth of SNAP benefits every month. And every dollar of SNAP generates $1.50. So if no one gets SNAP benefits starting on November 1st, that's how much we lose, is $320-some thousand times 1.5 does not come into our county. And that's all of us. And the people that I am most concerned for are the ones who are not going to be getting their SNAP benefits. So this is my concern for them. Anyone else with a joy or concern?
So there is the Shrek musical at the middle school, and November 12th through, I think, I don't know, but somewhere around November that we're going to be doing our performances, and we've already sold a lot of tickets, so. Yeah, Prescott.
I have a concern. I forgot my readers and I can't read any of this stuff. If anybody has any extras. Do you have an extra here?
I've had a concern about demographics, and that's the demographics of people that do the No Kings demonstrations. We have noticed the demographics are baby boomers, by a big majority. But I saw an article today that said in Washington, D.C., the main demographic were women with an average age of 44, which means it's more diverse than we're seeing here in our local area, which is sort of a concern. So that's great. Okay.
Our River Falls football team went to Eau Claire yesterday, and we beat them 73-21, which came pretty deserved after they were not saying great things about us this past week. So it was well deserved, and it's great to put them in their place.
Okay, you're inspiring me with another sports related joy. My son-in-law, Tyan, is going to turn 40 next week. He is a good soul, so there is a joy. And we are going to celebrate that by going to Soldier Field in Chicago to watch the New Zealand Blacks play rugby against Ireland. And we have family bets. Ireland won it last time, and a whole bunch of Irish fans evidently will be coming over. I am supporting Team Ireland, so.
So I've been trying to do a little bit of positivity to try to change the narrative of what is going on around us. So this last week, we have a pretty substantial project. You may have seen it on maybe all the news media, Grand Avenue. So we had the opening of Grand Avenue in St. Paul, a $9 million improvement project. I was putting the engineer in charge of that when I arrived at St. Paul a year ago. So we delivered it successfully. It was very promotionally successful. And so it was a very positive moment for St. Paul, but also for my first year.
This is the big rock for all the unspoken concerns and joys that we have. And we are going to sing a hymn today. Kind of exciting for me, having grown up in the United Methodist Church and grown up in a family that kept a hymnal in the car for long trips. So let's enjoy this. Well, I hope the tyrants are trembling when they hear the bells of freedom ringing. Okay, so we have the good fortune to have a couple of retired pastors speak to us today, or with us today. I don't think they want to speak to us. Janet Ellinger, she's a retired United Methodist pastor, and Gfall, who's a retired Lutheran pastor. I know Gene by email because she's always sending out emails for the Prairie Enthusiasts, which is one of my enthusiasms as well, and Richard's too. So thank you very much for coming.
I'll take this down so we can use it. But I want to read a reading to you. It's passed out. I'd rather have you look at me, but if you can't hear, I understand why you want to read it. So we'll do a little of both. This is called Banat. It's written by, I have to find it, I lost my page. It's written by John O'Donohue, and he was a Episcopal theologian who died very young at 2008, but he's written this book to bless the space between us. And now I can't find the page I had marked. Hold on. I don't know why I'm shaking. You seem like a friendly lot. But, I'll just read it off the sheet that I gave you. I was going to read out of the book because I always think that's more dramatic, but here we go. It's called Banat, which actually means blessing, and he wrote it for his mother. But I thought it was appropriate for the conversation I hope that we'll have today around grief and how that looks for all of us and feels for all of us. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind the gray window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colors, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken in you a meadow of delight. When the canvas frays in the current of thought and a stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so, may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. Yes, I always think that when I read things and use things for him. So Janet and I are going to do some things, but I'm going to let her introduce. However, we're dragging the mic out here so that we can pass it around in a little bit. Or switch back and forth.
Well, it's it's a privilege for us to be here with you and to share this time in conversation. Maureen mentioned that we both have served as pastors. Jean also has been a home health care and hospice chaplain, so that has given her some additional experiences around journeys in people's life that often involve a certain level of grief. When we're hoping to involve you and to have conversation with you, if you don't want to speak, you just need to know that's perfectly all right. And if you do speak, we invite you to remember there are others that want to speak too. So kind of manage your own time with that as we share together. Grief is a very personal experience, and the circumstances that create that are very unique and certainly impact the intensity of how one experiences that grief. But finally, grief is inevitable. It's a part of the circle of life which we all share. So our hope today is that we can find our way over time to carry our grief while we continue living at the same time. So I'm going to pass this over to you now, I think.
Okay. Like Janet said, we all do grief differently. Some of us one way, some of another. We're all different people, so of course we do that differently. And we understand that A few weeks ago, you also had someone here talking about considering grief and what that might be about. We're going to invite you to do a little bit of remembering with us and thinking about what grief might be for you. But we thought it isn't fair to ask you to do that without being transparent and doing a little bit of that for ourselves. And we kind of started calling this naming our grief, because we all sort of have a style of how we grieve. So I told Janet I'll go first.
I said okay.
And she said okay. And we've been friends a really long time, since the 1980s. And she's become family for us, and she's my parents' or my children's godparent. And so we've gotten to know each other really well, and we have talked about this from time to time, that we grieve very differently. Our grieving style, and it is sort of a style, is very different. So I'll tell you a little about mine, and some of that awareness has come out of recognizing that Janet is a wailer. I am not. I grieve very differently. I do not wail most of the time, but I'll let her talk about why she wails and how that happens. I used to say that I really didn't have compassion, because when I was in the midst of a loss, I didn't cry. I didn't even feel devastatingly sad. And it's taken me a few years to understand that that's just how I do grief. But what was underneath that for me was what was bugging me. I thought, why is everybody else just lost in their grief and doesn't seem to be with it like I am, kind of holding things in. And it took me a while to understand that, number one, that's just who I am. But number two, grief comes to me in bits and pieces over a long time. And you've probably heard someone say, you don't have to grieve fast. Everybody takes a certain amount of time and a different amount of time. But I thought, why is that for me? And I think part of it is that I'm the oldest child. And so I'm kind of the one that has had to be in charge. And wailing doesn't do that. I've had to be the one that's able to function. And so I think that's part of it. I tend to be kind of stoic. Maybe that's part of my Norwegian ancestry. I think my dad and mom was that. And I think I'm pretty affectionate, but compared to Janet, I'm not affectionate at all. She's a hugger and whatever, but she can tell you more about that. Anyway, so it took me a while to figure that out. But where I grieve is out in a day or a month or whatever, when I'm walking through the fields, when I'm sitting in the woods. I'm a hunter, and so when I'm sitting underneath a tree in the quiet, where I have time to feel, that's when I might feel tears running down my face. That's when I might come close to wailing. But that's just that's my style of grieving. And so I've just learned to be patient with that. I'm a pretty patient person anyway, and I've just learned to be patient not only with myself, but with my grief as well. And that's what lets me go forward, knowing that that will come when it needs to. Janet?
I grew up in Michigan, and when I was 11 years old, my mother died. And the pain of that loss, I stuffed really, really deep to the point that I really don't remember much about my mother. I have old photos, and my dad took a lot of 8mm movies, so I have cherished those. But that was just a really significant experience for me. I can remember little things, and one thing I really remember is the dress my mom had on in her casket. So that all got really buried in me quite deeply. And when I was teaching, later on, obviously, I would have these moments, and it was often in church. My dad was a pastor, so Sunday morning I went to church. But the choir would sing something, and I would think, I bet Mom probably sang that, or I bet she played that on the organ, and I would just kind of lose it. These things just kept coming up and coming up to me. And then when I was leaving Michigan to come to Wisconsin after seminary and all of that to start a new life, I was driving out of Michigan going west on 94, and I came to the Allegan sign, and for I don't know why, I took it and I went to the cemetery where my mother was buried. And I knelt down at her grave, and I cried and I screamed and I yelled at her for leaving me, and everything that had been stuffed. There was this geyser kind of coming out of me at that point. So I am a wailer, a self-acclaimed wailer. And that's, whether it's when our 2 horses died, whether that's when my dog went away and never came home, whether that's with a dear, dear friend who had died, those kinds of things. What I've come to think about is I think I carried unresolved grief in me for so many years. I don't have any inner space for it anymore. I don't let it in. I just hit it at the door and let it out, and that kind of gets me on my way with my grieving.
So we're sitting in this circle today because we want to invite you to think for a moment, or 2 or 3, or whatever it takes you to do, about how you might name your grieving or name your style of grieving. Janet said earlier, you're not required to speak. And just being present is part of your participation in this. But we invite you to think about and talk about your own style of grieving and what you know about that, if you know anything. Maybe you've never thought about, how do I grieve? But when we understand some of that, then it's easier for us to move forward, to not sort of be stuck where we are if we don't want to be. Sometimes our grieving is patient and we allow it to be. But sometimes we get frustrated with that. So we're just going to take a minute, and anyone that would like to share something of what they know about themselves, how they name their own grieving, you're invited to do that. And if you can't, that's fine, you can't and don't want to. And Janet will bring you a microphone because we want to hear what you have to say. And we share with each other, and you resource each other that way.
For those of you who don't know me, my name's Patrice Veit. If you notice my jacket, it says 2017 Polar Plunge. That's where a bunch of idiots jump into a hole in the ice. I never did it. This jacket belongs to my sister, Janet. On May 20th of 2018, Jan and her husband were fishing in Iceland, and they both drowned. The immediate grief was easy to handle because they were in Iceland and I was in charge of getting them and their effects home. But it's this jacket that has helped me more than anything, because I get to remember her. When I wear this, people go, "Oh, you did the polar plunge?" And I went, "Oh, hell no." And I have found, for me, the best way to grieve, the best way to share my grief, the best way to unload my grief is to tell her story. Because more than anything, she would want to be remembered. He would want to be remembered. To unlock my phone, there's a date in there. They were big Civil War buffs. It's a date from the Civil War. So every time I unlock my phone, I remember her. And remembering and passing that story on, for me, I've discovered. That's how I grieve.
Who else?
Um, I I think what I try to do about grief is to pay attention to nature. And that really is calming, and especially birds. And on my way here this morning, well, first thing earlier in the morning, maybe 6:30, I have a big wooden eagle on my front deck, painted wooden eagle, and I put some necklaces around it, pearls, because I love pearls. And I consider that my porch guardian eagle, angel eagle. And so this morning I went out and petted my eagle a little bit. And then on my way here, going from Ellsworth through Beldenville, an eagle circled me in Beldenville.
Way. I think, what I was pondering while you were talking is I wonder if you get better at grief the more the more you are required to grieve. Do you develop skills that help you through things? But if I had to put one word to the way I grieve, would be productive grief. Of, okay, what are you going to do with this now? You had this bad experience, bad things happen. What are you going to do with that? Starting with, now I get tearful every time I talk about this, but when we were 26, we had to make the decision to have a third trimester therapeutic abortion for a baby girl. And it was very traumatic. And I think living through that, we had 3 boys at home. If I hadn't had to get up in the morning and take care of 3 boys, I probably would have left the world. But then what do you do with that? And so how do you take that bad experience and make something good happen? So that's what I've tried to do with whenever there's a loss. With that, I schooled myself up. I was a registered nurse in my 20s, and I schooled myself up on teaching what do you do with loss. There was no grief and loss program at the hospital at the time. I started one, a program for people who had lost children. And I met with the OBGYN and the doctors in town, would give my name to women who had a loss or were experiencing a loss, and I would meet with them and talk with them and help them through that process of grief. And so making it productive. And then I think forward to my father dying in my mid-30s. What do you do with that? And then my mother lived another 34 years. She just died recently. And how do we take her life and have it? She loved beauty. And so using what she left to make the world a more beautiful place, if we can, she would appreciate that. So I would just say productive. How do you take it forward? Take that person's life forward, as Patrice mentioned, and go from there. I think another thought on grief is, when somebody dies or somebody leaves, you grieve for what you had and the love you had, but you also grieve for what you didn't have and now what you won't have. And so how do you deal with that? That's a challenge.
Thank you. In those years when I was doing better, and I would have these moments, I kind of got to a place of, okay, what are you going to teach me now? And to be able to kind of sit down with that, and what do you do with it? You do your best, which obviously is what both of you have spoken about doing. Sure. Thank you.
Every person that's spoken here has spoken to me at some time in my processes of grief, because I think it's different with different situations, and dear friends that I've lost, done the protective mode and help the families, help settle their estate, and that gives you a little time to not have that horrible grief that takes you down. And I've also had a unique kind of grief I hope it's unique, because I hope a lot of people don't have to experience it, but I've had 21 years of marriage to a person that changed in an instant 21 years ago with an accident. So it's no longer what was there, and try and make the best of what is there. And try not to dwell on what could have been or what was, because it's not. And move on to finding things that are there. And tolerating the parts that you just can't. I'm not even going to try on some of that. but and I've tried the howling. I mean, that in the beginning, I had a rock in the back of we were 40 acres. I go out there and I would howl. And that helped at the time, but then it left me with no energy to deal with what I had to deal, because it takes a lot out of you to howl, to get on with business and get on with the life that is there and make it work. So it's the being productive, self-productive, helping others that you have skills to help, and making the best of it. And remembering those people was so important, and remembering what they were at their, everybody has foibles, but remembering the good parts of them and what they gave to others, that's important to me.
And sitting in this circle today, we share these resources. Those of you that have shared your stories, and those of you that are sitting there wondering if you should say something, we're all resources to each other. Coming together like this, whether in twos or threes, can make a huge difference for us. I'm going to share a story I was going to hold till the end, but I was reading a story about a woman who was widowed, and she was just beside herself. She couldn't figure out what to do. She couldn't function. And someone said to her, maybe you need to volunteer. And I see a lot of heads nodding. And she said, I can't do anything. I don't know what I can do. But she decided to go to the local hospital and volunteer. And she said, I can't do anything, but maybe you've got something I can do. And they gave her a cart with cookies and coffee on, and said, just go around the halls and offer people that need, a cookie or some coffee or something. And she did, and she didn't really visit with them, and they didn't really visit with her, but she went around and offered that. And then she began seeing a young boy, about 16 or 17, sitting in one waiting area that she visited. And for a long time, she didn't do anything. She would offer him a cookie, and he said no, he just shook his head. But every day she went, she saw him, and then one day she just decided to sit down by him for a couple seconds. And he still didn't want anything, but she just sat there for a couple minutes, and then she left. But every day, she saw him again, and she would sit by him for a few seconds in quiet. And then after about a week or two, finally one day, she said, my name is, and I don't even remember from the story what her name was, but she introduced herself. And he just shook his head, and so she went, and the next day she came back, and he took a cookie and shared his name. And so after that, she still sat. They sat in silence most of the time, but eventually he told her that his mom was in the hospital dying, and he was just there waiting, but he didn't have any family. And she continued to sit with him. And when his mom died, she was the first person he told. We don't know what our presence means, whether you speak or whether you don't speak. But presence is what's important. I was a hospice chaplain for about 7 or 8 years, and it didn't matter if you went into a hospital room and said something or not. The fact that you were there made a difference. And it's the same for all of us. Is there anyone else that'd like to share something? Janet's got the mic. Oh, Maureen's got the mic.
thinking about this subject and some of the earlier words spoken, I'm remembering two situations of grief. And I think when one has a sudden shock and you never expected it, as I did with my father, who was 56 years old, and went to his office, family business, at 2 in the afternoon and ended his life with a gun at a holdup in his business. And of course, that was total shock. It was 51 years ago, and I can still tell the story of everything that happened to me that day and the following ones. And so there's that, wow, holy cow. And then the one I'm living with now, where I know my husband has not been well for a long time, to watch him diminish in his physical capabilities, not mental, but physical. And, just the anticipation, and perhaps making a referral this coming week to hospice. But we're moving into St. Paul, and so that's kind of strange territory for me. And as the oldest child, many of us are probably there, where we carry on, particularly when, in this case, my partner, my husband of 38 years, is not capable of doing too much physically, but we can talk. And I'm blessed with that. And he's not much of a talker, but we finally sat down and did some good talking the other night. And so I'm a talker, and I need to tell to whomever listens. And I also like to be a good listener, because I've been a social worker in a hospital and hospice for years. So talking and listening are really interesting things. The role we play, as you just shared that story. And maybe we just adapt differently when shock comes, or gradual anticipation.
I'm sitting here trying to think about how I can summarize this best. When I was about 4, I was pulled out of my biological family, siblings and parents, and I think that I learned how to stuff that feeling of loss really deeply for many, many years. It took a lot of therapy and a lot of education to kind of even get to understand what it was I was feeling in those early years. I didn't have a vocabulary for it. And I just really did become a master stuffer. And so over the years, I've learned that, as Kate was saying, talking and listening, being kind to myself, gentle, those things, although it's taken a long time, have helped me to understand what grief and loss, I should say, how to best maneuver grief and loss, and be as honest as I can with that. That's what I would say.
I think there are different kinds of grief. Right now, I feel a lot of grief about our country and what's being lost every day. I know that not everybody agrees with my thoughts on this, but I feel what I feel. And I grieve a country that I grew up in where there was due process, and we didn't have to fear that our elections would be hijacked. And the idea that someone would tear down part of our house without asking or going through the procedures is astonishing to me. And I feel as if I'm dropping the ball, letting this happen. My dad fought in World War II, and all his friends did as well. There are cemeteries full of them. And what they would say if they could see what's happening now, I think about that. And so, like Allison, I try to be productive with my grief and do things, learn things, join things. And I guess that's the only thing that's getting me through this is, as I have been talking to people, when I've said, what's getting you through, or what's your goal? And they say, to get to the other side. Another one said, survive. And I guess that, is my goal as well. Just not just survive, but to hold on to what we can until we're in a position to bring back what we had. But I think that is the kind of grief that a lot of us are feeling.
Good job on coordinating the microphone with your shirt, by the way. So after 2015, I had 3 years in a row where I lost extremely significant people in my life. One was my father-in-law, my best friend. One was my grandma, who helped raise me because my parents were really busy working. Another one was Imtiaz Musa, who actually came here and gave a speech and presentation as my neighbor, but he's a philosopher. And him and I would sit on street corner. People thought we were nuts. Summer or winter, didn't matter how cold it was. We would sit there for an hour, hour and a half philosophizing about life, about America, about kinds of things. And being that he was a college professor of philosophy, it was a great experience. But losing those three in a very small, short time, there's one thing I learned about my grief. There were a couple things. But the main thing was I wanted to make sure that their legend was heard, and I emceed 2 out of 3 of those ceremonies. And I found that experience to be able to express what they brought, celebrate basically what they brought to this world, was something that was really important to me. So I found I had this knack to just speak in front of a group and put my feelings aside and make sure their legend was heard. And I don't know where that comes from. I just have a knack for it. And I appreciate it. The second part of grief for me is I cry alone. There's never anyone around me. It could be anything that ticks it off, but I'm usually alone. And then I think about things. But it's the loss part. There's 2 parts of loss. You've lost something. I think others have brought this to the point, is how do you deal with the loss? But I was trying to think of the second part of loss I was going to say, but the it's not just that. It's that you've lost something, but it's also the feeling of being lost. Like, I've lost 3 significant people in my life that I interacted with on a regular basis. And what do I do with this time? How do I reassert this energy? How do I reinvent myself? It was that second part of loss to me that is also out there. So that's generally what I've been learning about grief the past few years. That's what I was trying to point. There's a two-pronged approach to that. But the gift is to MC, because I had so many people come up to me and say, "I can't speak. Please read this for me. Speak for me. Do this." And I may cry like by myself before the ceremony. I may go somewhere alone after the ceremony and wail. But during the ceremony itself, there's a second gear that kicks in, and it's about the person. It's not about my grief.
Silence counts.
I want to just say one quick thing. I think when we hurt, which is the pain of grief, at least I've tried to get away from it. we remove ourselves as best we can from things that hurt us in general. And so a part of that comes with the, oh my gosh, it's been 3 weeks. Let's get over this. Come on, let's, that hurry up and get past it, get away from it. But in truth, it's the remembering that brings healing. And if we don't find a way to handle that, even though it's uncomfortable, then we're kind of stuck, so to speak. But if we can get from mourning to remembering, then that becomes a celebration of that life in the midst of our own loss.
There's a Buddhist teaching that says we add to our suffering and or our grief when life changes, and we still behave as if it hadn't. And so we live with change every single day. Some joys and some concerns. But life changes every day, and I think when we can understand that that change happens, even when we're lost, and even when we have lost, then we can find a way to move forward, to take action if we need to sit in the woods if we need to. But we all do that differently. Today, maybe you've heard the term holding space. Today we have held space for one another to talk, to grieve, either quietly within ourselves or in sharing. Those are things we all need, and we've all received a resource, or more than one, by hearing the other stories and knowing that maybe when we come across what we're feeling is similar to theirs, we'll have somebody to talk to that can understand and can hear the story for us and with us. So with that, did you want to add anything else? She wants to add something else. Preachers, you know.
We all know the saying, you never know what someone's dealing with. And so to be present, like the story Jean shared of the woman who just sat. I don't know these stories you have shared, and my goodness. So what an honor to just receive all of this, and what an honor that you have each other. You may know of Parker Palmer. He's an author. He's done a lot of things. The Courage to Teach. He's done work with school districts. He's a Quaker. He's done a lot of spiritual writing. But in one of his books called Hidden Wholeness, he begins by talking about winters on the prairies in Kansas and out in that area. And these blizzards would come up out of nowhere and sweep across the land. And repeatedly, every now and then, they would find someone frozen to death in their own backyard because the blizzard was so intense and they were on their way to the barn and lost their direction and died. So what they started to do was to tie a rope to the back door of the house and run that rope out to the barn, so that if there was a blizzard and they needed to get to the barn for animals and whatever, they could hold onto that rope, get through the blizzard, and get to the barn. So my thought for myself with that and is, have I hung a rope? What do I have that will steady me, because the blizzard will come. It's inevitable. And the key is, the rope's not going to do you any good if you don't get it up before the blizzard. So that makes me think of the woman that was here a few weeks ago and talked about different areas of our life and how we're nurturing ourselves so that when we hit a blizzard, we have a handhold. We have some things that can steady us. And I invite you just to think about that in your own life. A rope to the barn.
So Benakt means blessing, and the things that have been shared and heard today are a blessing to all of us, as Janet said. So I just want to read the last verse of that to you one more time, because it speaks to me of this time we've shared together. And so, may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. May it be so.
Thank you so much. Next week, we have Gritty Gratitude with Heidi Metro. There'll be Poetry Club after this service. Remember, Daylight Savings Time will be ended. I thought it was this weekend, but I checked. So luckily I didn't come here, whatever it would have been, earlier or later. Living Sustainably, Robin Bowles, the former manager of Whole Earth Grocery and a great environmentalist, will be speaking. And there's book club and administrative committee after the service. November 16, our beloved Eileen Korenik will be talking on absolutism. Such a great speaker, always a big hit. So I hope that you'll be here for that. And there's a basket on a chair out there in case you want to leave some financial gifts, but your presence here is a great gift to us as well. And we have some lovely treats in the kitchen. Wendy DePeso left green tomato bread, which sounded so strange to me I had to try it. Good though, right? Yeah. And also the Rice Krispie bars, wasn't it? Mock Baby Ruths. Oh my gosh. Well, I didn't try those, but oh, okay. Okay, good. All right, and let's do our closing words. Go out.